Howdy ho, neighbors. This is Mr. Lamond with U.S. History, Unit 12, Test Review for 12.1, which was going to tell us, was World War II preventable? So we're going to spend a moment talking about the reasons for World War II. First and foremost, we should remember that the reasons for World War II largely fall on the back of the Great War, World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed at the end of the Great War, had left Germany without land, as you can see in the map here, losing things like the Rhineland, Alsace-Lorraine, left them without military as they were demilitarized. Battleships taken away, soldiers taken away, and maybe as much as anything, humiliated just by the loss of power. They went through a political revolution of sorts. The Kaiser Wilhelm stepped down, and for a while they were known as the Weimar Republic. Things were pretty bad, as you can see from our friend from Princess Bride. It was humiliations galore. Of course, then the Great Depression hits, and money became worthless in Germany, as it did all across the world. You can see the person here sweeping up the money because, like we said, it wasn't worth anything. So out of the ashes of post-World War I Germany arises a guy by the name of Adolf Hitler and his Nationalist Socialist Party, nicknamed the Nazis. Hitler was a very gifted leader who understood that promising to become the Third Reich, the third great Holy Roman Empire, although there was nothing holy or Roman about him, he had a gift for drawing people to him and promising that all of the greatness of Germany would be restored. He at one point even tried a coup d'etat to take over the government. It failed miserably, mostly because he was dressed in lederhosen, which nobody can take seriously. And he ended up in prison, where he wrote his Mein Kampf, My Struggle, which many Germans saw as almost autobiographical for the nation. All the struggles that they had to be great once more. Hitler was also wise enough to realize that every great empire needs a protagonist, just like Batman needs the Joker and Superman needs Lex Luthor. Well, Hitler felt like blaming the Jews would work well for his nation. And so thus began the early persecution of the Jews, which would lead to the systematic genocide, which we'll talk about later on. An example of this was something called Kristallnacht, Night of Broken Glass, in which Germany kind of unleashed some systematic and government-sponsored destruction, burning synagogues, throwing rocks through shop windows. Hitler and the Nazis were very good at turning people against the Jews with caricature and propaganda. You could see the Jews here seen as being too involved with money, too much like the people who sold out Germany as opposed to this master race that Hitler promised. While this was going on, Hitler also was rebuilding their military, incredibly such. You could see Hitler climbing out of the Versailles Treaty here, knowing that they were building up their military, their navy, their air force. And what was Europe's reaction? Well, it was appeasement. Like a kid in a candy store whose mama refuses to say no, Hitler basically bent over and became spineless, allowing Hitler to walk up their backs. You can see that Chamberlain, pictured here, Neville Chamberlain, allowed Hitler to walk on top of him in giving him Czechoslovakia. Chamberlain walked out saying, "I've achieved peace in our time." So basically, when given the chance to stop Hitler, Europe decided to appease. Hitler was no dummy. He realized the number one issue that limited German success in World War I was fighting a two-front war. And so he instantly went to Stalin and said, why don't we promise not to fight each other? A non-aggression pact. And so Hitler and Stalin got in bed together, or one of the ugliest weddings this side of some, well, never mind. And you can see them walking off across the roses, but each one has a pistol behind their back. But for now, he kept the Soviets off his back. With that, he unleashed Blitzkrieg, or Tanka Tanka, depending on how you refer to it, his lightning war, in which he had learned the lessons of World War I, no slow trench warfare in which you wait for your supplies and play it slow and cautious. No, he's going to use bombing and paratroopers, panzer attacks, lightning war, and the Polish responded with cavalry charges. And you can imagine how well that met. But Blitzkrieg was incredibly effective as Hitler took Poland, then turned his attention on Denmark and Norway, and then soon turned his attention on France. France, in the meantime, had built its super trench, its Maginot Line, over here on the east coast of France, between them and Germany, this incredible fortress that was going to prevent the Germans from ever coming through. So, of course, the Germans did what they did in World War I, and they went around through Belgium. And Hitler did his little dance. The British troops were pushed off the edge of the map at Dunkirk, and France fell. Now all that's standing between Hitler and the conquest of Europe is Britain. And Hitler prepared for an amphibious invasion known as the Battle of Britain, in which he bombed night after night, day after day with his Luftwaffe. First, correctly, he attacked the airfields and airplanes, but he got a little stubborn when Churchill bombed Berlin, and he decided to just attack London and major cities. So whereas you have people living in subways and collapsed buildings, the RAF was able to get up and fight against Hitler enough to put him in a draw. And Churchill thus, with his famous speech, "Never give up, never give up," the British never gave up. That sends us over to the Pacific, where the Japanese, now as the Empire of the Rising Sun, were following the lead of their Emperor Hirohito, but more importantly, their militaristic war cabinet led by Tojo, and they were militarizing. If you remember, they'd been left out in the cold at the Treaty of Versailles. They'd gotten pushed around by the United States and our Great White Fleet, and they'd learned the lesson. And so they militarized, and they militarized in a hurry. Remember the graph that shows, on one hand, Germany's great militaristic increase, Japan's great militaristic increase, and the Soviet Union's militaristic increase. The United States is way down here, not keeping up. If your women are holding guns, it's for real. The Japanese begin to expand into Korea, China, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, taking many of the islands in and around the Philippines, wise enough not to attack the Philippines just yet. It got so bad that we referred to what was going on in China as the rape of Nanking. It was destructive. It was scary. They were breaking all kinds of rules. And the United States was very assertive in saying, please stop, please. So we hit their rape of Nanking with embargoes, basically saying, we're not going to send you the stuff you need as an island nation. And Japan will basically bide their time until they say, well, we've got other plans. Thus endeth the review of 12.1.